All right. Good morning, family. It's 9 a.m. in California right now. So it's good to be here. There's no timer, so this is going to be the best 7 hour share you've ever heard. So, all right, buckle up. No, I'm kidding. I'm going to do 7 hours. Um, so I always strive to be in the moment and be present. And so I wanted, I've spoken a lot. I've been in ACA a long time, and so I always have like a plan. I probably planned too much, but I don't think that was the case today. But before the meeting, I was listening to music to kind of center myself, and and I was meditating and praying, and we started tears started coming out, and um, a lot a lot is going on in my life right now. Issues with work and personal relationships. So one of the things being an ACA, I don't I may do it, but I don't apologize for crying. And so if that happens, I'll let that happen. So, but I'm really excited to be here. Um, so, um, how I wanted to start is I took a speech class in high school, and they always say, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. So I'm just going to start. I'm going to start at the end of the book. If you go to the red book, page 590, it's not quite the end. I'm not going to. I'm kind of giving you the answers to the test, right? This is an open book test. So the solution is to become your own loving parent. So that is the theme of what I'm going to say today. Again, I'm not. There's a lot more on that page, and I'm sure many of you have heard it before. So a good question would be is why am I an ACA? Why am I here today? I think that's a real fair question. Uh, my childhood trauma has affected me as an adult, and in some ways still affects me, even though I've been in the program a long time. And so my childhood trauma has manifest as self abuse, and so um, my recovery is working on is is to you know is the solution is to become my own loving parent, and that is what I work in the program at that. And I want to phrase it a different way to learn to love myself in a healthy way, and I'm going to put a little pin in that right now. um, but it's really about my self-abuse, addiction, thoughts I've have about myself. My adult life has been kind of basically living in fear and growing into self hatred. And so my years in recovery is to work on that, is to again learn to love myself, be my own loving parent, and that's the solution. Um, I saw something on the WhatsApp this morning, and I thought it was so appropriate to what I'm saying right now. I saw this that the only toxic relationship I've ever had is the one I had with myself. Everyone else was just a reflection of that. And so to me, I really, it's to me, it's about, I love the concept. I think it's big is keeping my side of the street clean. And, yes, as a child, I was a victim. In fact, and as an adult, at times, I've been a victim. I think it's a certain situation I've been in recently that was true. But me, recovery is gaining that power back, and that's what I work on a daily basis. I have a degree in engineering, and so I always kind of think of that I have this software of toxic software program that boots up in me, and goes into whatever self-hatred or fear. And so my recovery has been rewriting that code and working on that and changing the default settings that I go to, my default reactions. And I always say that, much of my life I listen to I Suck radio. And so I've been changing the channel to a different channel. So I love you radio is what I'm listening to. Um, I first joined ACA and in 1988. Uh, my uh, there was many factors for me joining. I was living with my girlfriend at the time, and actually ACA was not my first 12-step program. I actually went to Codependence Anonymous. Uh, and my girlfriend at the time had read, I'm sure that many of you heard the book Codependent No More from Melody Beattie. Great book, kind of trailblazer. Back in the 80s, it was cool to be codependent. It's like the hip thing. We were all codependent. And my girlfriend at the time I lived with one day told me she had read the book and said that she was codependent, and she said I was codependent. And I didn't really understand what codependency was. But I said, you said it, I'm obviously codependent. So I think that's one of the signs of codependency. If someone calls you codependent, you don't know what it means, and you say, I am, you're codependent. So, um, and so we went, we went to a Codependence Anonymous meeting. I really don't have a lot of memory other than we went. I mean, I joke that she left me off like, mother taking her kid to kindergarten, left me off, but that isn't true. Um, and so not too soon after that, we broke up. Yeah. And around that time, my father passed away of cancer, bladder cancer, at 62. And I was in a lot of pain with the relationship ending, my father passing away, and I decided to go to it's Anonymous. And while I was there, everyone was talking about ACA, was talking about adult children of alcoholics. And and technically my parents are not alcoholics. I believe my father is what I would call a dry drunk. He was a teetotaler because he was a pastor. But um, like I said, I think in my I think, and I'm taking his info. I think he was also a sex addict. I think there was also some stuff. But and then so I go, I can't join adult children alcoholics. My parents were not alcoholics. And but people said, yeah, I could. And I've talked to others around that time, and it's interesting because some meetings were wouldn't allow people to come in if they're alcoholics or their parents weren't alcoholics. I didn't find that to be the case. So I don't know if any of you have been around this long. Uh, I didn't find that the case. So I started attending both programs, and back in the late 80s, early 90s, they had we had in Southern California, we had a lot of social events. Like we had dances, and interesting to me is I really enjoyed going. And then the exciting part to me is what are we doing now on Zoom? We're having dances, we're having music, we're having, to me that's so exciting. I just really enjoyed that, and movement and sound, and see that back now in a lot of our meetings. We have again music, dance. You don't have to dance. So I really love that part. So I started attending. And when I first came into the program, I didn't really understand 12 steps. I didn't really understand the concepts or anything. I just knew I was in a lot of pain. And I know that with newcomers that it's important for me to, and if I could say anything to you is yes, you're probably in pain. I don't think anyone I don't think anyone goes, yeah, my life's good. I need something to do on Thursday night. I'll start going to a 12-step meeting. I've never ever heard someone say that, right? It's usually because something is you're in pain, right? And that's why you're here. And I'm reminded I'm having some pain now from situations that's going on now. But if you're new, my suggestion would be, even if you don't share, is to attend, is to go to meetings, listen. Um, I've known people that have sat in meetings and never shared for 6 months, and now we can't shut them up. You know, it's like listening is so important. There's so much of that is important for me because I like to talk, is to listen, to hear what people say and understand um, the healing that goes on here. And one of the things that I've heard, and being so many years of recovery, is that, and it makes perfect sense to me. Things don't get better. I get better. I handle situations better. I deal with things in a more healthy way. I have a loving support system, a community. I have resources. I have literature. So, you know, and so I think that's really important because there's still issues. I have people in my lives or situations that happen. People still cut me off on the road, or driving really close. So how I deal with those. And one of the things also I forgot to mention is that, being in program so long, there's a part of me that thinks that I should be, you know, at a perfection. Like one of the things dealing with the pain that's happened recently is like, oh, I need to be in a good place. Well, that's not true. That's true. It's dealing with stuff. So I was like, oh, people go, oh, you've been in since 1988. That's what, nearly 36 years. Does that mean I'm going to be here 35 more years? It's uh, like, Bill, why are you still in human form? Shouldn't you be in like spiritual energy by now, since you ascended? Uh, and so a lot of this is my stuff, letting that go. So my family, I'm a middle child. I have an older brother and older sister. My father was a United Methodist minister. I'm a PK. I'm a preacher's kid. There probably should be a 12-step support group. There probably is. I always say there should be a 12-step program for this. And I bet if you Googled it does exist. I always joke about it. There should be a 12-step. And I bet if you Google it, there is a support group. And I'm sure there is for preacher's kids. Uh, and I always felt, probably the closest thing to a preacher's kid, that your father's career or parents' career affects you as a child, is probably a politician, right? And so, you know, like I remember as a kid, I would have temper tantrums, and I remember breaking the glass in the front door as a kid. My mother said, don't tell anyone in the church. Don't tell anyone in the church she did this." And so, like, don't be real. Don't have problems. Look good. So, my mother, as I call her, Smother, my mother, Smother. I have, as I found out later, I have had emotional incest with my mother. Uh, There was 20, man, my brain fart here. Um, Meshment. That was work. Like I had a meshment with my mother. I like I took the job on, and I think part of the reasons why I've done comedy is like my job was to make my mother happy, because I didn't want my mother, because my mother was sad all the time. So I took it onto myself to make my mother happy. And my mother would share things, intimate information about her relationship with my father. Um, and I think in a lot of ways, she wanted me to be like her surrogate husband. And like she'd say, Billy, you're a good boy. You know, you're going to be different than your father. You're a good boy. You're not going to be all like all other men who want sex. I mean, this is stuff I heard as a kid. You know, and mess me up with that part of my life. You're And so I kind of took on that role. I'm going to be the good guy. I'm going to be a good guy. And how I affect my relationships with people, I was a people pleaser, and when I still have a strong sense that I want people to love me. Like there's people take tests like be respected or feared. I always want to be loved, and uh, and I honestly, I'm like Sally Fields. People like me. They really like me. So I kind of have those skill sets, but in a lot of ways, it wasn't my authentic me because um, especially as a male, the only feeling I could have was anger, and that always became rage. That was modeled from my father. So my mother smothered me, um, looked for me to make her happy. Like it was my job as a kid to make my mother happy. Um, and then my father uh, raged. He could be violent, and I have to say, as a third child, I had got a lot less physical abuse than my older brother did. I got some. Like my mother told me later, and this is my only source of information. My mother is that my father got mad at my trainer. I don't know if it was like 4 years old. I mean, I don't know what terrible thing you could do at 4 years old, where my father nearly beat him to death. And I guess, according to my mother, she stepped in before he actually killed my brother.
Butterfingers, sorry, Bill. You just need to unmute.
Okay, I don't know if I said anything wrong. I'm like, oh no. Um, okay, no worries. I do security on Wednesday night. I've accidentally muted speakers before, so it's all good. It's a karma. No. All right. So in a lot of ways, the abuse from my father wasn't so much his anger or his punishment, was he wasn't there. My father was not there. And a lot of this is circumstantial. I don't really have proof, but later my understanding is my father was having affairs with women in the church. When my father had passed away, I helped clean up my father's stuff, and he had condoms, and my mother had a hysterectomy, and she even said to me at the time, "I don't know why your father has condoms. I know somebody said maybe he's handing them out to people at church. I don't know, but there was just my mother would always say to me, I know he's spending time with these women, but I know he's not having sex with them. Like that was going to make a difference. So again, circumstantial. I never saw my father have affairs, but I believe he was a sex addict. So I'm sure if my siblings heard this, they would be upset that I said this, but that's my belief. And so he wasn't there. He again, he could be violent. He could scream at me, but the big thing was he wasn't there. I mean, I as a kid had weight issues. I was overweight. And then around seventh grade, I started losing weight. I started jogging. In fact, I started jogging with my father. It's like I started jogging with him because this is something to do with my father. I actually became a sports fan because um, I could connect with my father on the sports level. Uh, I used to, as a kid, like we had two TVs. I'd go in with my sisters to watch whatever they were watching. And at some point, around 11 years old, I realized my father was in the other room watching sports. I was in there with my sisters watching whatever they were watching. I realized, wait a minute, if I started liking sports, then I could go into my father and watch sports. And so I know that's one of the things that I did to connect with him. But but I ended up becoming a long distance runner. I was all league cross country in high school. I was on the championship team. Um, but I think my father saw me run in a race once of all the years that I competed. And and it's interesting because my mother was always there, right? The enmeshment. In fact, uh, one of the runners had family members that took photos. Like he was one of the runners on the team. His father was the photography teacher at the school. So we have all these photos, and it's of us racing, and you can always see my mother in the background there. It's like, there's my mother again. Like, it's like find Waldo. And again, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but like, where's my mother? Like everyone knew my mother. Like you'd always see her in the pictures. But my father, um, who's never did, and I found out later that he would tell people at the church how proud he was that I was all the cross. I was also honor student. I became like a super achiever to get my father's approval. But and I remember when I graduated from college, he took me out and he said he was proud of me, and I just like, what? Who took my father's body over? And so again, big thing for me is that there's something wrong with me. We talk about shame. There's shame from things that we do to hurt people or ourselves, but there's also what toxic shame. Shame. I need to apologize because I'm breathing, that I exist, and that was the thing that I am shame. I'm sorry I'm here. I'm sorry I'm talking to you. I'm sorry I exist, and that's the level that I was at. And in a lot of ways, I see my childhood as like a horror film. Like what's going to happen? My parents argued. There was people screaming all the time. Um, and I had my own room at one point, and I remember just sitting there. This is my own country. Like this is my own safety. And but I was always fearful something bad or somebody would be mad at me. Somebody would scream at me. I'd be hit. And so I brought that in. It's amazing to me in a lot of ways. So I guess I can understand it that I actually got a degree in electrical engineering and I got a job. But the thing that I realized is, and I'm sure many of you can relate to this, is part of my protection as a child was disassociation. And so somehow I could get through school and be a good student, but I was disassociating all the times. And I remember when I got my first engineering job, I'd be in meetings and people go, Bill, well, we're talking to you. But, I'd be like, they set you up with a senior engineer and they were always getting mad at me. Like, you're not even listening, Bill. You're not even paying attention. I was so disassociated. I had no idea that, that, you know, that I was doing it and at a level where I was barely conscious all the time. I mean, I was able to get through college without being present. And I think one of the successes of my recovery is that again, I mentioned I want to be present. I want to be here. I want to be in the moment. I want to be present for everyone here and for myself. Now, one of the things I learned in ACA is our parts. I don't know if you know, we all have our inner child, right? So I remember like inner child, uh, you know, um, and you know what? Little Billy's saying he wants to do something right now. So, all right, little Billy's going to do something right now, and he wants to show you Leroy. So, little Billy wave wave to Leroy. So it's like you're talking about parts. Little Billy's going to get his chance. He's going to show off Leroy. All right, we'll put you over here. He'll be safe over here, Leroy. So I have little Billy. I don't know. He's 3, 4 years old. A few years back, I was really trying to talk to little Billy. And the message that I got from him is, why do you hate me? Why do you hate me? Why are you hurting me? That's what little Billy was saying to me. Why? Why are you hurting me? And so now we got Leroy. We got we got Baby Yoda. We got Baby Yoda. Little Billy gets a lot of attention. And there's other parts. There's my teenager, and so if you ever see me really upset and fussing a lot, that is my teenager. Um, I have what I call interesting parts. I have because I'm an engineer. I have the inner engineer that takes over. Sometimes I'm like go into really a lot of detail about something. Like when I go visit a place, I read up on the history and everything, and you'll get all this information. Like, oh, I'm sorry, that's my engineer coming out that's doing all the details. I also have um, my entertainer. So that when I first, one of the things again, as in my childhood, I would make my mother laugh. I would make the family laugh. I used to say in my family, I have two sisters, my mother, that the the women at the table talk and men eat. And so I always said I had like one line a night at the dinner table. I had to make it good. So I learned to, that was my, you know, when the tension happened in the family, I would crack a joke or do something funny. And so I have my inner entertainer. And one of the things that I realized in recovery is that that's my entertainer is like the safety. Like I went to a retreat that last year in Arizona, and I really wasn't that familiar with people. And I noticed that the entertainer was out. Like that was like the comfort zone, that I was the jokester. And so I was like, right. Like there's other parts of you, Bill. You don't have to be the entertainer. And so, being able to integrate that in again, especially little Billy with all the abuse and just, have fun with him. And I love to play. If you know with me, this little Billy is playful. It's kind of that innocence of like he loves to play. Uh, he's very innocent. And then that I have the snarky or the critical parent. I understand a lot. We talk about trying to integrate the critical parent, and in a lot of ways, the critical parent was the protector for me, and to have that protection without the toxicity or the abuse has been really important for me. So that's been a big deal, learning my parts. Uh, I'm going to look at my notes just for a second here. Okay, and we talked. One of the things that One of the big things that when I started in 1980, we didn't have literature. We didn't have the Red Book. We didn't. I mean, there's so much great literature we have now. It's just amazing to me. Um, and so one of the things that uh, what's really important to me is community. I heard this a while ago. The opposite of addiction is connection. The opposite of addiction is connection. And so uh, we have WhatsApp. We have you know, the pandemic, there was a lot of bad things that happened during the pandemic. But one of the things that, like this, being able to, I've met people all around the world, fellow travelers that have common things with me. And so that's been really important to me is community. I have a support system. I've had sponsors. I've sponsored people and just having that love support. So many years, I, my therapist was called social media. Uh, I'll just say this out loud. Social media is really a sucky place for mental health issues. I mean, I guess you could be on a chat room with mental health professionals or something, or we have WhatsApp when people are from ACA. That's different, more specifically. So one of the things so I've had this thing about self hatred, and many times uh, it's led me to a place where I wanted to kill myself. And to a really dark place. And I could say I've never I've never attempted suicide. I guess that's called suicidal ideation. I think it's called where you feel that way. I think for me, a lot of times is the feelings are overwhelming, and it's hard for me to deal. I know a lot of people talk about being numb to your feelings. I would say, and I don't know if this is necessarily, I think early on it wasn't true, but with the work that I've done, I feel my feelings intensely. I have very intense feelings. Um, I remember I used to when I'm old enough where we had things called personal ads. Now we have dating apps and stuff like that. But I'd always put myself as easygoing. And at some point, I realized I'm actually very intense. If I'm not easy, I'm codependent. I'm a people pleaser, I am not I am not easygoing. And so like that awareness that that was actually mental health stuff, that so-called easygoing. I'm actually a very intense person. Um, and so dealing with these feelings of self-hatred, uh, I think part of the process, the solution is to be our own loving parent. For me, number one, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. Awareness of that. It's not my fault. It's not. I mean, to, to remind myself that every day. When things go wrong in my life, I always like, how did I how did I F up? I mean, I think it's important to see my, like I always said earlier about keeping my side of the street clean, but I go like somebody does something bad or abusive to me, that was my fault, right? So that's more than keeping my side of the street clean. It's not my fault. Um, Affirmations have been really important to me. Because I always think a lot of times it's by a thousand cuts, a thousand paper cuts. And it's not the big things. It's just a series, a lot of little things. And one of the things I always remember as a child being shouted at that I wasn't doing things because I think I was probably disassociated, right? So I always, I get shouted, I always move and I end up knocking things over. I think I end up drew and then I say, so I drop things because I know I rush. And then I'm like, you are the worst person. And I say some really awful stuff I say to myself. And and one of the things that came from my childhood is is I'm stupid and I'm lazy. Um, I can tell you neither of that objectively as an engineer. I have evidence that those are not true, but that was so embedded in me that I was lazy and I was stupid. So I became a workaholic. You know, I have a degree in electrical engineering. Most, again, it sounds like I'm bragging, but I'm just saying I'm not. I would say I was the stupidest person on the planet. I can objectively prove that is not true. That's the level of abuse, that's self abuse. And so I used to look in the mirror and say, F you. I didn't say F you. I said, the full words. And so years back, I started, I don't know if you ever heard of Louise Hayes. She had books on affirmations and really changing our thinking. I'll look in the mirror, and say, hey, handsome. And when I started doing that, that was extremely uncomfortable. I was like, but I can do that. I can do that. And looking at how I talk to myself, the self-talk. I always said if one of you talked to me the way that I talk to myself, you wouldn't, or anybody, I would never allow you to talk to me like that. I would never allow anyone to be the way that I myself. I needed to do affirmations. I needed to affirm who I was. I surrounded myself with people in recovery that saw me and cared about me. Um, but the thing that to me the miracle is the more I've worked on loving myself, the more I have loving relationships with others because I'm not defending myself. I'm not defensive. I'm able I'm able to accept myself more. I'm able to accept more others more in my life. I have no idea how long I've spoken, and we don't want to speak for 7 hours. So, anyone know when I started? Just so I can, any idea how long I've been doing this? Anyone?
Yeah, I do. At about 42 minutes.
Wow, Well, okay. I'm not going to apologize. My inclination is to go, oh, I'm so sorry I spoke for 42 minutes. I'm not. I'm not going to do it. Okay. Like just a couple things. I'll wrap it up. I don't apologize, Bill. Uh, gratitude, gratitude. Let's let's land this plane. Okay, let's land this plane. Let's talk about gratitude. I don't live in fear. I live in gratitude. It's one day at a time. Progress, not perfection. Gratitude. When I was nearly homeless, I was at one point I was stealing the candy at Whole Foods Market to eat because and I would look, when people were looking, and so what I would do is I would get up, like, come up with a gratitude list, and maybe the gratitude list. I like the shirt I'm wearing, right? I started with I find something I have gratitude about, and so that is so important, gratitude. And I want to close with a story. Um, I don't know, 6 months, a year ago, I went into Starbucks, and I was really having a bad day, and uh, and the person making my drink said, "How you doing? How's your like?" And I was honest, I have a crappy day. And she gave me my drink, and on the top of it, it says, "You are so loved." She wrote, "You are so loved." And if I can leave that story, and it's like, oh yeah, reminder, I'm so loved. And so I'll leave that with you. You're so loved. Thank you for allowing me to speak for 7 hours. I'm sending all your love. I love you. Thank you. Thank you.